speaking of local news now, many of our businesses here are still suffering, right? Trying to eat by, trying to survive here. But the question here is, what can the government do here? And according to Philstar.com, the what do you call this? The writer here mentions that a distress call to the IATF, which is in charge of designating what status that the cities here or the country is, in particular in the different regions, different areas here. And he goes on to say that the Restaurant Owners of the Philippines, Association of the Philippines, or Resto PH, the situation is much worse for the restaurant industries, in particular, obviously, with the ongoing lockdown, limitations of how many customers are allowed to eat in the venue, and then only allowing for takeouts here. Now, some would say, is it fair because other businesses, other industries are allowed to resume their operations, but having to follow strict protocols to ensure the safety here? So obviously, this has obviously pushed to the breaking point of many restaurants. Obviously, bigger businesses can withstand, well, not totally withstand it, but last longer than small businesses. And in particular, in our country, majority of our businesses nationwide are comprised of micro, small, medium enterprises here. And without any financial support from the government, without any support for our employees here, like the stimulus package, like what's happening in the United States, we are left to fend for ourselves. And obviously, it seems that it's unfair. That why is it that the brand is the restaurants themselves are being targeted, that they have to limit their number of consumers here that are allowed to eat here, and obviously it has significant impact that to the point of financial loss. Obviously, cash reserves have been depleted or already used up, and to the point of closing businesses. And then obviously employees have to be let go and are jobless. So doesn't bode well for our industry. So we need to uh, stay glued with the situation and find ways to solve this. Either manage the spread of the virus, or allow businesses to resume operations, but with restrictions or protocols that would make some sense here. Otherwise, it doesn't benefit any of us, whether you're a citizen, a business, or even the government here. And they go on to say that they've been discriminated against by the IATF. Why restaurants are prohibited from dining operations under MECQ restrictions. Well, actually, we're now in GCQ, right? And then while other offices, factories, BPOs, construction sites, seaports, airports, and government offices and public markets are allowed, right? Obviously, restaurants are still a basic necessity because they provide food for our citizens here. And obviously, the risk of spreading the virus would be similar, or would it be worse or better? But the question here is, it should be equal footing for all industries here. And obviously, the IATF assumes that takeout sales are sufficient, which is obviously it's not enough. I mean, can supplement the business, but it cannot be the main source, because it's still a different experience of eating food, dining experience, versus just takeout here. And obviously, if you're going to use takeout, then they have other more options other than, let's say, I want to go to my favorite restaurant, whether it's Aristocrat, Max's restaurant, Shakey's, or whatever restaurant it is. Then obviously it will cut in their what do you call this, cut to their revenue. And obviously, for many physical stores there, they have to pay rent, salaries. That's still ongoing, unless landlords will give them a tax break, which the government should have pushed in the first place, and maybe tax break for this year and so forth. And again, it goes on to where they mentioned that not everyone is like Jollibee, that can withstand this difficulty here. And obviously, the main issue that they're stating here is, if government were to provide financial relief, I think that would have alleviate some of the concerns here. And not just that, but also, if businesses need to borrow money, that the banks would allow them, even though uh, BSP Governor Mr. Diokno stated that banks are extending relief. Obviously, there's no incentive for the banks to do that, because if those business borrow money and then they cannot repay their debts, then unless the government instructs the banks that they should allow them to borrow money, let's say a million or whatever the amount that's necessary for them to stay afloat within at least the current year, calendar year. And obviously, some even banks are even doing the opposite. Instead of helping out those businesses, they've even called on their loans which were not yet due and accelerated payment schedules because they are concerned that the businesses may not be here in the near future, which is, you know, fending businesses fending for themselves is not, you know, the term is for survival of the fittest here. So meaning the government is not doing any what do you call this, any favors for our businesses here, so that we need to find ways to be able to support our business, even if I want to eat at all of those establishments. But if I'm restricted to move out and only I can eat it, not my family or the rest of the family or everyone else, then obviously it's not going to be a sustainable solution here, no matter what you look at it. And according to the organization Resto PH, they're going to say that, they only have three requests. That the first is they should be allowed to accommodate vaccinated individuals, which is a difficult thing to know. How would you know if they're vaccinated or not? That's why managing the spread of the virus is important, so that people, some normalcy could resume in a sense. They're asking for at least 50% capacity so that they can maintain their profitability there. Then second is that malls, retail shops should be allowed to serve vaccinated individuals, similar to what was mentioned earlier. And third, that government should provide some sort of financial relief to those businesses, as I mentioned earlier, which is, I think, a big deal, because the taxes that been levied upon those businesses should come back to them, so that they could still be there by next year and the years to come, so that they could repay those taxes, so that everyone wins. The business are still there, people are still employed, government gets their taxes in the long run rather than the short run here. And until that happens, many of the business will continue to suffer and or worse, shut down, if this is not taken care of here. And obviously, I want everyone to benefit here. As a consumer, I want businesses to be there. Don't want business closing up shop just because they can sustain it. And many have already closed. And obviously, there are many opportunities for others to start up a business. But obviously, the government should do their part. Yeah, actually, yeah, so some big restaurants also yeah, actually that's right. That's why the takeouts are not enough to support the businesses here. That's why in the article they're going to mention that they need people to eat in the restaurant, unless your business is primarily takeouts, right? But if you have a physical store that you need to have dine-in guests here, which is, a big problematic here. And big franchises can sustain it, but not indefinitely as well. And what if this were to continue until next year or even the year after that? So you could just imagine the turmoil that many businesses are going through right now, which is, I commend them from struggling to be able to sustain themselves, but we need to find solutions that can have us an impact right away, and not just in the short run, but also in the long run as well. That's why we need to spread the word that, we have problems and we need solutions now from everyone here, whether on the private sector or as well as in the government sectors here.